good morning, good afternoon. This is Lisa Schwartz with ITSM Academy. I am so happy to have all of you that have joined us today. Hi, Rayanne. How you doing today?
Doing well, Lisa. Thanks for having me.
Oh, girl, it is our pleasure. We are so excited. We finally got onto your very busy calendar to be able to do this, and I'm really looking forward to the insights that you provide for us. So we've put together, as we talked about, Rayanne, a fun little polling question, because I know generational differences is often something that you talk, train, and consult on. So we put up what I think is a fun little polling question just to get us started as folks come in. We are seeing a lot of people rolling in. We are right at the top of the hour. So it is my great pleasure to introduce Rayanne Bruno. Rayanne, many of you that are with us today may know of Rayanne and her background, and I'll ask her to do a quick intro of herself in just a moment. But Rayanne and I have the pleasure of sitting the ITIL 4 DSV, Drive Stakeholder Value course together. And Rayanne also teaches for us on the Essence of Experience class, which is a class that's all around experience level agreements and XLAs. And coming out of DSV, kind of had a mind meld about how those two things really work so incredibly well together, and how we are encouraged about how this is going to move forward employee experience. So Rayanne, I am going to pass it directly to you. Have fun.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks so much, Lisa. And everybody, thank you for being here. First, you said just a quick little bit about my background. When I started in corporate America, I started with an organization that was really aligned with the business. They drove everything that IT did. So we were either in business meetings or they were in ours. And we very much understood how what we did in IT impacted what the business was trying to accomplish. Then fast forward, and I came to a competitor, and it was restructuring everything and trying to add structure into an organization where it hadn't been, and also trying to create a partner out of IT. So a lot of what I learned about really focusing on and delivering business value and measuring the right things came from that experience, which should have been really easy because I was tasked to do everything I had done as a manager, as a director, and had a team of people to do it, but it actually was incredibly difficult, and I learned a lot through that experience. So my goal today is to, as Lisa mentioned, talk about drive stakeholder value from ITIL 4, but only from a very high-level perspective to understand its focus. It really focuses in on the phases and the need to deliver this business value, and how to focus more on the customer journey to do it. And then I'll talk about some of my favorite corresponding ITIL 4 concepts, like the guiding principles, one of my all-time favorites, and I probably quote them on a daily basis. And I'm going to introduce these thoughts and then move into a real-world story where it was a negative experience. Negative, maybe individually there were some great transactions, but the experience itself was negative. Yet from a scoring perspective, high customer sat scores. And I'm sure you're wondering how that is, but surprise, we do it in IT all the time. So I will tell that story to really bring us back to how can we drive stakeholder value? And the answer is through experience, through really having experience initiatives, focusing on experience, measuring experience. So it's that combination of operational excellence and the experience itself. So you see that fourth bullet down where I talk about combining sentiment and operational data that can really transform experiences, and that the XLA, experience level agreement, is really this way to bridge the gap between what we think is operational excellence, or it could actually be. And when it is, then how do we have this negative experience? So you'll see that XLA can bridge that. And again, you're going to help me with some of these prescriptive ideas. My goal today is really that you walk away thinking, all right, I want to view this differently. I want to know what I don't know. What do I know? How can I capture it and formalize it and get others to know it and actually move forward? So ITIL 4 talks about the service value system, and within it is the service value chain. And we've been saying this for years, haven't we? We need to deliver value. The customer defines value. The customer assesses value. And we have focused very much down the middle. we have all these pieces in place. We have our guiding principles, we have our policies, we have regulatory requirements, we have our processes and our training programs, and we are continually evolving and improving and usually making those scores a whole lot higher or making those numbers better. So drive stakeholder value is about that. It's summing it up at the top. It's optimizing the value of the service journey for all stakeholders. So right there, that tells us that there's a lot we need to know. First of all, who are our stakeholders? And they probably have different desired experiences. They are going to define value differently, and we need to be able to co-create that with them. So you'll see in the second bullet, we're talking about working with our stakeholders. Certainly, we said earlier that they define value. Well, they're going to co-create. What is this value proposition? What are the relationships we need to have? How can we be transparent? How do we interact and collaborate and communicate on this ongoing basis so that we can agree to what that value really is and we can align? When that word align, it means so much. I took you down the middle of the value chain, so we have to align everything that we do to be able to actually realize that value. And it's not easy. I mean, I'm going to share those principles, start where you are. There are ways to do it. It's amazing the momentum you gain, and it's amazing how much better we get at it over time. But it is, again, very focused on not just delivering the value, but making it a great experience around it, whether it's for external customers or internal employees. So these concepts at a high level are understand what the customer journey is. We talk about customer journey mapping. Many of you talk about value stream mapping and just understanding what the customer's expectations are, what their needs are. This engagement is the collaboration, the communication, the transparency, the moving forward together. And applying a design thinking. I'm going to show you an experience design thinking slide a little later in the presentation. And again, we want to be able to deliver that value. And I apologize for that. Let me get that back up there. So first, let's define experience. Drive stakeholder value defines it as the sum of the functional and emotional interactions with a service or a service provider. And again, it's perceived by the stakeholder. So I want to go back to that for a moment. Functional, we feel good about that. I can build processes. I can mature processes. I know how to measure them. That feels good. Emotional, oh, that doesn't feel so good. And we have to deal with it. We always have to deal with it. We have to deal with emotions on support interactions. We have to deal with emotions in meetings, but we don't necessarily measure emotions. Now, I know some of you are moving toward that. I've heard about a lot of people, buying the AI or getting the sentiment analysis so that you can start to look for those kinds of terms or harsh words or a certain inflection. And certainly we're starting to move forward from that perspective. But the bottom line is we do need to understand what our customers are experiencing and recognize that it's not all functional. It's very much about how they feel in the situation, and it's based on what is important to them. And I recognize that a lot of different people have a lot of different things that they value, but we will start to learn trends and we will learn commonalities. And as we do grow our skills at an individual level, we also recognize and can tune in to that one particular customer that we might be working with or stakeholder at that moment. So traditionally, IT has been very focused on technology solutions. And that's what we measure. And even in a service, we have all the different entities within that service, all the different groups, all the different aspects, hardware, software, data transfer. And we measure that. And we feel like we're successful. Maybe we're successful at the service desk because we're compliant with our service levels. Maybe we're successful in our infrastructure team because that our servers have plenty of capacity, they're reliable, and they are available. So we have all these metrics that we're using in our respective areas, which is still really important, but we've got to elevate this and we've got to transcend it with experience. And the way we do that is we need to know how every single entity, every aspect of what we do, of our services, how it actually impacts what we're measuring, how does it impact experience overall. So we want to transcend these siloed views. and really focus on experience. To do this the right way, it needs to happen across the company. However, a lot of times we've got to just get started. And interestingly, a couple of years ago, I taught a CX, a customer experience boot camp at conference. I had 22 people who all thought they were embarking on a customer experience initiative. By definition, to me, a customer experience initiative is that external customer of the organization, whereas employee experience is the internal, all of the employees. And out of those 22, 19 of those companies were really focusing on user experience. IT was trying to make it easier for users to use IT services. And that's not a bad place to start, but we've got to be more than just IT. It's not an IT initiative, but IT needs to be a partner on it. We want it to be a company-wide initiative so we can get started and move and get the rest of the company really engaged in it. So this from ITIL 4, when we talk about the 4 dimensions, up in the upper left quadrant, that organizations and people, that's a game changer to say we've got to focus on this. I've taught ITIL for years, and I would always say, we're going to teach you, about all these pieces that need to be in place, but we're not going to tell you exactly how to do it. And quite frankly, the toughest part about this for you and what you need to do to be successful is manage organizational culture change. Well, when it comes to experience, we also have to understand what people are experiencing. We've got to hear people. We've got to understand their feelings. We've got to let it drive that functional side. How can we get better operationally? And how can we make sure we're not siloed operationally so that we really are providing this great experience? And when we have a better employee experience, we deliver a better customer experience. And if we're focused on customer experience, then our organization is more successful. So we are helping our organization to be successful in whatever area it is and whatever it's trying to do. And IT has way more insight to how people are feeling and what people are experiencing than even they realize. It doesn't matter if you're walking out to your car in the parking lot and somebody makes a comment, they come to your walk-up desk, they're in user acceptance testing, they're in a project meeting, they're always making comments. We're hearing it, but we're not always documenting it or sharing it or looking across all of these comments and seeing if there are any similarities. And that's
perfect segue, Rayanne. Sorry. It's Lisa. Speaking of making comments, I did not say at the very beginning, we have a robust Q&A planned at the end of this. So as you have questions, please put them in the chat. Rayanne's blocked out a bunch of time for us to go through all of your Q&As. So anyway, continue.
I like how you said a bunch of time to go through all. Okay, I will try, absolutely. And I'll monitor chat as well. And sometimes when I'm coming to a topic that will answer your question, I will do it verbally as we get through. And then, of course, afterwards, we are going to do that even further. So our goal here with these 4 dimensions, or the way to be successful, is that we've got to connect the dots. We can't measure in these respective areas independently either. And there are places that we're really good. We are really good at the information and the technology aspect. We understand our partners and our suppliers. We're getting better at defining value streams, and we have been better at maturing processes. But independently, these aren't going to make a significant difference. We want to transform the experience. We want to help our business be a true business partner. And we've got to go beyond these individual areas. So XLA Collab talks about experience and the fact that, and I mentioned, but I might have not really emphasized it, we're very transactionally focused. We measure transactions. We gauge our success on how well we handle individual transactions. And XLA Collab says it's more than a transaction, right? It's so much more. And whatever they're experiencing, it is affecting what they think. It even drives their decisions. For those of you who are external facing, they could decide whether or not they're going to do business with you. I think a good example is maybe a restaurant. A lot of us have our favorite restaurants. We go back there. If you've got great experiences, and it's the whole deal, right? It's not just the food, but it's also the service, it's the ambiance, it's the ability to be able to talk and be able to hear each other. There are so many different aspects of that experience. And if it's good, we're going to keep going back. Well, let's say you go to your favorite restaurant and one time you have a bad experience. You'll still give them another chance. But if there's another one, you're going to start to maybe change your mind. So it might drive different actions, different decisions. And the big piece there is that experience is cumulative. It's not about a transaction, it's about every transaction and about every interaction. So it's a matter of recognizing that it's not just this one experience with one part of your organization or your IT department, it's about every experience. And it does drive consequences. And experience is about how people feel, and it's about what they're getting from this. What are the outcomes? It's not about the maturity of our processes. Behind the scenes, certainly our processes facilitate our ability to deliver better experiences, but that's what we want to be able to step back and do. So my goal here now is to walk you through a real world experience. As you're listening, I'd like you to think about some of this, the organization and people side, the process side, all these different things that are impacting these experiences that I went through. And XLA Collab calls those moments over time. And each moment over time, each transaction was measured. I did fill out customer satisfaction surveys, but if you look at those, it seems like I had a wonderful experience. But you'll know otherwise in a moment. But I also want you to know that this organization is incredibly mature in its processes. Its people are very well trained. You can tell that they have great resources. They've got knowledge bases. They've got an ability to reach out to a subject matter expert while they're interacting with you. They're incredibly smooth in how they do it. You have to really be kind of tuning in to even know that's happening. They automate as much as they can. They drive you to their website and they automate things as much as possible, but you can also go to a physical store. So they are very mature. They've got these multiple channels for being able to do whatever it is you want to do with them, whether it's buy their products or use their support. They're incredibly successful. They're very well respected, and they are very innovative and continually improving. And I will tell you that this experience hasn't changed my loyalty to them. I still love Apple, and I still love my Apple products.
I'm sorry, Rayanne, but I just thought one might even say they are a genius at support.
Very good. There we go. I should have said that. Darn it. I wish I would have said
time.
That. Yes, I will. So let me tell you about my experience. My son lost one of his iPod Pros, and they're rather expensive to replace. So we said, you know what, and we're just this kid has lost things his entire life. So I finally just said, okay, you're in your 20s now. You've got to grow up and be responsible for. So I'll tell you what, we'll buy that for you for your birthday. So I set out to do it. I went to Apple Store online and I tried to buy one AirPod Pro. Not possible. You can buy a new case, a replacement case, but you cannot buy one AirPod Pro. So I called. And I got somebody, and I wanted to order an AirPod Pro, and what they said is this is actually a repair order. So they created a repair order, and then they were ready to take my payment, and I had a $100 Apple gift card that I wanted to use specifically for this. Actually, I even purchased it because it was like a deal where I also got a $10 Target card, and I got some money off. I'm like, oh, this is a sweet deal. That makes that AirPod Pro even cheaper. So I bought it specifically to replace this AirPod Pro. So he created the repair order, and then when I said I had the Apple Store, I had the gift card, first he said, is it an Apple Store gift card? I said, yes. He said, I apologize. He said, you can only use that to make a purchase on the applestore.com website or at one of our Apple stores. He said, I can't take it for a repair order. However, I'll tell you what, this is going to generate an email. And when you get that email, you can actually click to pay. So let me do that, and maybe you can use the gift card on your side, even though I can't take it on my side. So he sent it, and I went ahead and clicked and tried to use my gift card, but I inadvertently redeemed it to my Apple iTunes account. So now that means I have $100 to spend on music and movies. And I was like, no way. That is not what I wanted to do. So I called again to to try to get my gift card back. Well, first of all, it was a different person, but they were very fluid in getting me to the next person. I get to this other person, and he said, I am so sorry. He said, it looks like you had a charge for iCloud, and that 1099 was deducted from the gift card when you redeemed it. And he said, and if it were still $100, I could give it back to you. He said, but unfortunately, I'm not able to refund the gift card. And I said, well, listen, I need to have that gift card because I've got to go to the Apple store because it's the only way I'm going to be able to get this AirPod, and I need to have that gift card. And so I'm really sorry, whatever the situation. But he was able to schedule my appointment. So I have an appointment at the store, and I'm on a mission to try to get that card restored. And I called again. Got this really great. First of all, I was ready to unload. I will let you know that I was really frustrated at this point. And when I called, I'm just thinking in my mind about what I'm going to say and how I'm going to say it. I'm just going to tell this person, and I'm going to tell them, I'm sorry, I know it's not them, but. And he answers. His name's Russ, and he has these great customer service skills. And he just, he just totally diffused me. And he sounded like he really wanted to help me. And I said, Russ, I've got to tell you, I was ready to unload my frustration on you. However, based on how you answered, I just can't. I said, that was great. And he said, well, thank you, but I really do want to know what's got you so frustrated. He said, because I'm going to make it my mission to make it better for you. He said, I'm going to fix it, whatever it is that's frustrating. He did get me to someone again to try to get that gift card. It wasn't him. It wasn't something he could do himself, but he got me to billing, and he got me to somebody that just, you could tell. This guy was looking at all his knowledge articles. He was reaching out to people. He was doing anything. He says, I'm going to figure this out for you. I mean, he really, really wanted to help me. And he did, because he made this comment, if it were the $100, he said, I could redeem it in a second. I said, so it just needs to be $100. He said, yes. I said, so I could add 1099. He's like, yeah, let's do that. He said, you add it with your, if you can add it with a credit card, then I can redeem it and you can take it to the Apple store. So that's what we did. So I'm happy. I'm getting back to happy. He found a workaround. We made it work. And then, unfortunately, work got in the way and I had to cancel my appointment. And trust me, I was upset about it. And I wanted to schedule a new one. And interestingly, they can only see 7 days out. So I was able to cancel my appointment, but actually I didn't cancel it. I held on to it just in case somebody else in the family could go, but I couldn't schedule a new one. When she looked, she says, I apologize. I can only see 7 days out, and I'm looking at the stores that are closest to you. She says, now there is one in this part of Georgia, and it was like an hour and a half away. I said, no, I've already been inconvenienced enough. I am not driving an hour and a half to get this blessed AirPod. At this point, I'm ready to just tell my son, too bad, you're not going to get it. By the way, this is over so far a course of 3 weeks. It's already been past his birthday. I told him I'm really working on it, right? So we didn't even get it for the birthday. So had to get a new appointment. They said, call back tomorrow because the next day will open up. Call early and maybe you will get it. So I did. However, none were available. Well, I had noticed, and somewhere I had the conversation with somebody that they had first submitted it as an iPhone issue. And when I had said something about correcting it, the girl said, oh, well, when I changed to AirPod, there's no availability. But when I have iPhone, then there is availability. So I told this person, her name was Maubrey, and she said, oh, well, let me try it. And she flipped it. She goes, oh, my gosh, I've got an appointment for you. And so we found another workaround. I actually taught them something. And yet, just remember that. An AirPod Pro, I probably never would have gotten an appointment if somehow that didn't get uncovered in these transactions. So ultimately, I did go to the store. I had my gift card, my e-gift card in hand, and she is ready. She takes it. She says, I'm so sorry. She said, it's going to be about 5 to 6 days because she's, actually, let me check on something. She goes, I'm just seeing something a little odd in here. Just let me go back there and check. And she comes out with the AirPod Pro. Thank goodness. But she took the initiative to say, okay, just although it's telling me I don't have this in stock, there's something that's making me think that maybe I do. So again, the people were great. Each time I filled out a customer satisfaction survey based on the questions they asked me, I answered them honestly, and they were great customer sat scores because they all did do what I needed at that moment, and they were all incredible at what they did. However, overall, as you can see, look, I mean, I'm giving you the short version, and there are 7 different steps up there, right? So this idea of experience and what I told you that XLA Collab talks about it, moments over time. First of all, one of the things driving stakeholder value talks about is that you have you have interactions and you have touch points. And touch points we might not know about. A touch point can be a comment somebody made to me. It can be something I see on your website. It could be some review somebody put out there. It could even be something somebody put in chat. So those are things that we don't always have visibility to that could impact somebody's actions or decisions. So let's say with the mobile provider, I buy a phone, which this just happened, and then there are all these hidden costs, and we're not happy about it. So I happen to be in the store, and I made some comment about, whoa, okay, so that's not really my monthly rate. Really, it's this. I made a comment in a store. I promise you it was not recorded. Well, then, and now this isn't my experience per se, but that support center transaction there in the middle, that's an interaction. An interaction is reciprocal. I actually did something with your company. I worked with support. I went to your service catalog. I downloaded something. I bought something. That's an interaction that we do have visibility to. But again, these touch points, other people's opinions, other people's comments, just what's happening day to day in my experience, that can make me change my mind. And when it comes to IT internally, a lot of times that makes them bypass. I had somebody in class the other day that said, trust me, people were avoiding the service desk like a plague. And I'm not saying that happens. I love the service desk. I've spent my career working with service desks. But the thing is if people had a bad experience, they will go elsewhere. And that impacts the organization, certainly. And we don't have visibility to it. And let's go back to what we measure. We measure customer satisfaction on transactions. What about all those people that are bypassing a process? What about all those people that are finding other ways of getting support or just complaining straight to a director or a CIO? So I mentioned that the XLA, and I'm going to move into that in a moment, can help to bridge this gap. If we look at what I went through, there was a lot of effort on my part. There was high customer effort, and there was also high employee effort. So it impacted the employee experience and the customer experience. And it's negatively impacting their organization. It's taking longer, using more resources. From my perspective, it was inconvenient. I was frustrated. And the only evidence of my frustration was in my comments and in every subsequent presentation I've done where I've shared this story. So it is true that when people have frustration, they share it with the world. But anyway, my verbal comments were not, I don't know if they were captured. So my observations are, yes, fundamentally and functionally, they work wonderfully. We all know that. They've got huge maturity. They do care about customer service. They do care supposedly about a great experience, but measuring customer service is not the same as measuring customer experience. And they have escalation paths, they have resources, but what happened created a heavier burden not only on those people and all the different respective areas, because now we've got tickets in different areas, billing, scheduling, repairs, support, but it's a heavier burden on the stores. Their whole goal is, I don't necessarily want you to go to the store. If we can fix something for you or sell something to you, I'd love you to use our automation. It costs us less. It uses fewer of our resources. It makes our resources available for more critical types of issues that you might have. And those positive surveys, because of the questions that were asked, and I answered them honestly, they don't really have insight into all that I went through to get one AirPod Pro. I would have liked one and done. That was my desired experience. I didn't want to put a lot of effort and time into this. I just wanted to buy it. I wanted to go out online, buy it, pay with a gift card. It gets sent to my house, gets wrapped for his birthday. Or that repair, that's fine. Put in the repair order. I'll pay you with my gift card. It's done. It gets sent to my house. But you all just heard my story and don't want to hear it again about what happened. So from an employee effort perspective, they all did what they could do within their capabilities and their administrative rights and their role. And they all really did want to help me. And that is one of the reasons that I didn't blow up, right? That I didn't unload on Russ or anybody else, because they were all trying so hard to be able to help me buy this AirPod Pro and get my appointment or whatever it took to be able to do it. And they did need to use, there were multiple resources that I talked to, multiple resources that they reached out to. So there was high effort on their part and a lot of time invested. And then we used the store resources as well. So there's a cost to the company. There's a cost to the employees. Employee experiences do impact customer experience. So I want to see in chat, I want to hear from you, based on all that I told you, based on what I said earlier about these different components that we need to look at and everything combined for these moments over time that create the experience. I'm going to turn it over to you. You are now tasked with helping Apple to be able to measure that experience. What can they do? How can they find out when these types of things happen? And see if it is something that's common. Is it something they need to change somewhere? First of all, what made that so difficult? And where should we focus to fix it? And by the way, there's a survey out there that I'm not, if they said it, I'm not sure, but there's a link that Nina posted just to know about your SLA and KPIs. And it's this ongoing survey, and that they're really trying to see what's happening in the industry.
And Rand, looking at the audience, there are several certified XLA champions and more on the call with us. So come on, guys, throw Rand some ideas, please.
Yeah, let me hear your answers.
I will tell you this, that our poll at the beginning, cheeky child, tormented teenager, mad midlife, or groovy grandparent, I think at the very end, if we have time, we're going to just throw that poll up again and see if we either matured or helped youthify anyone on the call with us today.
I might have gotten people more riled up. Everybody might be that mad now. All right, come on, everybody. I'm not saying that we don't have to fix processes, but I want to know, because you are experts, come on. What are some of the things that restricted them? What are some of the things that were in place that made that happen? I'm going to have to start answering my own question pretty soon.
Well, I mean, I'll start with what I think is kind of not an easy, but the easiest answer, because that's my way, is, looking at the whole value stream of experience seems like a pretty logical place to start, doesn't it?
Sure. And so let's talk about how you can do that, Lisa. So for example, let's, maybe something simple. I always think, I'm going to go through the 7 guiding principles. Start where you are. So what can we do right now? Each and every one of them heard my comments. So we can do something as simple as start collecting feedback. And yes, you can put it in a ticket, but it just makes it a lot tougher to get it out. Now, some of you are starting to use some sentiment AI, where it's looking for harsh words and maybe even for inflection if it's doing it audibly. So there are some tools that are out there, but I'm going to give you this really simple idea that Lisa had, as a matter of fact, momentarily, about what we could do. But maybe one thing is start capturing that feedback. Another is see how often Ray and Bruno reached out to Apple. And then if we look across these different transactions, can we put it together and see that it was really all about the same thing? I just wanted to buy a blessed AirPod Pro with an Apple Store gift card. So are we a little too stringent on some of our policies? What is the reason that you can't use an Apple gift card for a repair? We have to start stepping back and looking at all those pieces and the dimensions that are impacting this experience. And first, of course, is it even something that they should invest in? Is this just something that happened to Ray and Bruno? Or are there a lot of people who are trying to purchase one AirPod and they have to end up going to the store? Or, really, most of them are probably buying it with their credit cards, so it's not an issue. So, of course, there's this whole, as Lisa said, this whole experience journey, the whole value stream. Let's look at it, and then let's see where we really need to focus.
And Ryan, if you open up your questions box, you're going to see lots of folks have thrown in some ideas for us.
Oh, the answer in the question box. Okay, sorry, I was looking at chat.
Chat. I know. I realized you're used to go-to training, not webinar. So
yes, and interestingly, where do I see my questions?
If all else fails, sorry, technical moment. Go to view
Okay.
default control panel layout at
All
the
right.
second of the bottom, and it will put it back in your box for you.
Okay. Okay. So interestingly, it's just not giving me a question tab. So go ahead. Tell me some of their ideas, please.
So, hey, Cheryl. Hey, in Canada. Look for surveys with comments and action. Follow up on the comments.
Yep, there. That's great. Very good.
Yep. John is suggesting capture multiple customer journeys. How often does this happen?
Good. Perfect.
Yep. Then we've got some really practical that would sort of have solved the solution of the day, which are interesting. But Davey says surveys are often closed questions, but they do not measure emotion. Give that boy a payday chocolate bar.
Exactly.
We need to ask more open questions and use analytics to perform sentiment analysis on them. Amen, sir.
Yes.
The links between the internal staff stress and poor customer experience, surely these are linked. Angry customers make for unhappy employees. I mean, we all see those statistics all the time, but I think that's interesting. Can you talk to that for just a minute, Rand?
About unhappy employees and their effect on customers?
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Because
absolutely.
I don't think any of these employees were specifically unhappy, but I think, especially considering the quality of customer experience that they really do want to provide, I think they would be awfully chagrined. You know, by the time you're talking to the awesome guy that you couldn't even yell at, well, you really diffused that on you. But you know, that cannot be a fun call to receive.
No, and also we don't know what it did to their stats internally, right? And that comes back to, are we measuring the right things and are we getting a balance? It's not just about the numbers. If it is about the numbers, everybody will hit the numbers. And I have to believe, and maybe some of you worked at Apple, but first of all, I know they train them really well. Anybody I've ever had in any other company who had gotten their training from Apple, it's amazing how customer service oriented they are and how in control they are of their vocal elements, et cetera. But if they're incented by the time time to resolution or anything along those lines, they're not going to be happy. But I think most people in those situations, like, they had this eagerness to fix it, and you could hear it in their voices. And I'm assuming too that they probably did have a feedback mechanism to say, hey, do we have this? I couldn't find this. And I know they were asking others. But I think in some different companies with maybe less training or less, they don't have the same resources and tools, we probably would have heard some frustration. And when we're not equipped to do our jobs, I mean, it was an exception in this case. But think about how often just the most simple things that people want that should be easy to do. And I'm not saying mine necessarily was. I mean, it should be easy, but maybe it's not common. But there are common things in companies that we should be able to do that we can't. And those are the types of things that I think frustrate the people that are providing the services. And when you hear that frustration, it also, like, if somebody didn't sound like really willing to help when I called, I probably would have unloaded on that person. And then that's really not a fun situation.
Well, and I know we've got to transition to other things, but just a thought I had about that is, and there's also business policy behind this. Of course, They don't want you to buy one AirPod. They want you to rebuy a set.
Right.
There's some, I'm not saying that Apple is nefarious, but that's a nefarious business decision, I believe.
Probably. Yeah. And there's probably something about the gift cards that they're concerned about. And there's a risk. There's some kind of risk, and that's why they don't want to use it on the repairs. Or because they want to sell more. Yeah, you're right. There are some business decisions, but it goes back to what some people posted in the questions. How common is this? How frequently is it happening? And if it does end up happening frequently, then maybe we do need to do something about it. Okay, so let me transition for a moment. I want to share a different experience. This one's real quick, I promise, but it was very interesting. A different result, at least from what has been visible to me. Panera, I don't know if you know, but they have this coffee subscription, and they had a promotion for it, and we have it. And so whenever we're out at any time of day, you can get refills, but after 2 hours. So anyway, no matter what time of day we are, we're like, hey, let's go to Panera and get our coffee. So we would get an iced coffee at night for the next day, and so we want no ice. And when we ordered no ice, when this all started with our subscription, you could see the person like looking and looking. Like the one guy said, "I'm so sorry. I have a light ice button, but I don't have a no ice button. But don't worry, I'm going to put light ice. It's what it's going to say on your receipt, but I'm going to go let them know." And so then he had to leave the register, go back to the kitchen, let them know that his order was really no ice, even though it said light ice. And then he came back. And, so he had to leave, and then the people behind us had to wait a little longer. So that was kind of the impact there. But interestingly, 3 weeks later, we go in and we happen to have that same guy. And we've been ordering it throughout, right? Different people all having to yell back to the kitchen. Sometimes we got ice, sometimes we didn't, because now it's based on a person's actions, right? But that person taking our order certainly tried to make sure we got what we wanted. But when we walked in, this guy named Michael said, "Hey, guess what? I have a no ice button." So 3 weeks, I was pretty impressed with that. So I think, first of all, the original situation, it wasn't much effort on our part, but it was higher on the employee's part. It also, it affected people, other people that were waiting, could affect their time to wait. And it was definitely reliant then on whether or not somebody listened when that person said, "Don't put ice in it." So it could certainly impact perception as well. So my assumptions, though, are that they are soliciting their employee feedback, whether it be to their manager and onto the company. There's some way that they are paying attention to the employee experience, and they're also paying attention to the customer experience. What are some things that are impacting customers that you're not able to do? How can we help you to be able to do that? Back to Lisa's point, if it's a business decision that we want to do that. So I feel like they've got the focus on both the employee experience and the customer experience. They've got these internal partnerships. They're looking at it end to end, and there's great communication. And that's where we want to get. Because today, too often, in my experience with Apple, was really this watermelon. And you've heard about this watermelon effect where it looks like we're meeting all of our metrics, but are people happy about it? So here you see the XLA, experience level agreement, on the left with experience indicators being red in the watermelon situation, but we're compliant with our SLAs. We're hitting our targets. I still have this loyalty, and I know it was a situation that was different. So I trust that my next interaction will be good, but if it's not, I do have choices, right? So we tell you to grow kiwi, and that's what you see on the right-hand side, and that's really what Panera did, right? And again, it didn't really impact my effort or my satisfaction, except when we did get ice. It was like, we didn't want it to dilute the coffee, so we weren't thrilled about that, and it made it manual. But they found a way to automate and optimize, and they grew the kiwi, and I have to tell you, I was really impressed. I'm like, whoa, they got that key after 3 weeks. I'm sure it wasn't just us. I'm sure there were a lot of people that were asking for no ice. So let me just give you
No.
a visual for this idea. Did you want to add something, Lisa?
Oh, no, sorry.
Okay, so let me give you this visual of an XLA. When you're building an experience level agreement, first of all, I've heard from so many people, they're thinking that when we talk about XLAs, we mean you use these instead. And no, you don't. Because remember, this whole experience, it is about the functional part as well, but it's also about the emotional part. So the experience level agreement side of it is looking at sentiment. What is this desired experience? For Apple, I wanted one and done. And then how do you feel? Do you feel like we were equipped to be able to do that for you? Do you feel like we responded quickly? Do you feel like, so we start asking you how you feel about different areas within it. So your experience indicators are whatever actually impact that experience. Do I have to make extra calls? Do I have to go through other channels? But a lot of that comes down then into your SLA. So your experience data, we call it experience data for the desired experience and how you might feel, and to start measuring sentiment. It's how you feel, are you happy with? And then the SLA side, this is what we're really comfortable with. But in that case, you started to talk about some things to look at. How frequently is it happening? How many times are people calling back about the same thing? How many reopened tickets? How many ticket hops? How many escalations? So we start to have these numbers that we can combine with the sentiment, and we start to get a good feel for what the real experience is. And I believe that when you start focusing on sentiment, that you're going to update what you're measuring on the SLA side. And know, too, that you can't change too quickly for sentiment. When you start to see a trend change direction, start really getting under it and looking. And this is where we grow. Okay, well, maybe the question's not quite giving us the answer that we need to have. Maybe the people that are answering aren't really reflective of the whole organization. So we grow over time when we start this experience journey. So let me wrap by just walking through it at a high level, that you apply this design thinking where you look at what the need is today and where are we, what does this experience look like today, and then what's this ideal situation, then how do we actually start making it work, and did we actually do it? You see, one of the 7 principles here on the left, we've talked about how to focus on value. I'm going to touch on some of these others as I walk through, but I think these are just practical and things that we use. So start where you are. What do we know? Can we start capturing sentiment? Can we start understanding what people are feeling and what people are experiencing today? And how will we start to do that? How will we start to capture it? And how will we start to have a more holistic picture? So look for our feedback opportunities, decide how you can collect that feedback, have a system for actually taking action on that feedback, have communication, collaboration all built in. So as I said earlier, we've got to connect the dots. So here's Lisa's brilliant idea and a great way of thinking about keeping it simple and also starting where you are. So she said, what if at the beginning of a call, and she was thinking about Russ and my story, that they're tuned in to try to assess where they think you are by sentiment. So on a scale of 1 to 5, your frustration level, I feel like, is a 4. So now I'm going to use my skills and my techniques, and I'm going to try to diffuse those feelings. So I'm using my emotional intelligence skills and my customer service skills and my vocal elements. And at the end, I'm going to assess your sentiment again. I think you're happy. So I think your frustration went down to a 0, maybe a 1, and I think your happy meter is maybe up to a 4. And I'm going to explain why this could be important. And then I'm going to follow up with a customer satisfaction survey, and I'm going to be a little more tuned in as well. So no, it's not comprehensive, and it's just one data point. But when we correlate the 3 of these, it is pretty basic, but it's easy to collect. And here's where I think the real benefit is. First, we start getting a little bit of a trend. Why are people frustrated? Let's grab their comments. Let's put those somewhere so that we can start measuring those, as some of you said, and start to understand what it is that's affecting sentiment. But look what it does for your agents. They're starting to look at it from your perspective. They're starting to tune into your feelings. They're recognizing that what they do evokes feelings. And they're going to use their skills to help get you back to this place of happy. And they're looking at the experience end to end, and they're starting to give useful feedback internal to the organization. So we need to solicit the customer voice. Here are some examples of some questions. And with this is a way to progress iteratively with feedback. It's a way to collaborate, promote visibility, and for us to really have this end-to-end view. Up in the upper right, you see this CX magic button, and I just want to share, many of you know Nate Brown, and years ago, he was working with a large call center, and they were starting to hear some comments from their customers. So he bought them these easy buttons. It just goes into the USB port. It's pretty. It's bright. I see it. It's this physical reminder that we want to have people's comments. They clicked it. I believe it took them to a SharePoint page. So it just took them someplace kind of rudimentary. They put the comment in there, and then they did some sentiment analysis. They started looking for those words like some of you are using tools for today. And they started to gather sentiment. And then what they did is they would start to have meetings, bringing all the right people into the room. And there's I don't know if you've ever heard of the Oz principle in the book Wisdom of Oz. But the thought there is that, what they talk about is we need to provide feedback and solicit it and collaborate, but not blame storming. So it's not bring you into a room and here's what people said and why are you doing this? Bring you into a room and say, here's what we're hearing. Let's look at the end-to-end experience here, everything that impacts it, and let's find ways to minimize this or find ways to make it better. So first, make the feedback easy. Know that a customer satisfaction survey is not enough. And again, it's transaction based. So let's have conversations. Let's do voice of the customer interviews. Let's go where they work. Let's live through it and see what it's like and how it's impacted. I love Kitchen Nightmares. I think it's an awesome way to look at this end-to-end experience. He looks at all aspects. He's trying to get loyal customers to make that restaurant successful. And he wants them to have a great experience, from the quality of the food to the quality of the experience. So it's a great way to give insight of everything we need to look at. And we need to analyze and align our operational data with the experience data. So have experience level agreements, align your SLAs with them, and on an ongoing basis, keep improving this. And again, share that feedback and get to that point where the organization is looking at it. We have experience review meetings. We all do care. And you know what? It's also going to be a better place to work. And then we'll find ways to optimize and automate. So when we take this experience perspective, we look at where we are today and what the desired experience is. We use this balance of the X and O data and XLAs and SLAs. We go well beyond the customer satisfaction survey, well beyond the operational data. So in essence, we're encouraging all of you to grow Kiwi and also to see how happy people are when we do. So that's all I wanted to share. I'd love to get your questions. And Lisa, I'm going to need to be reliant on you to share those with me.
I gotcha. And that made me feel better too, because anyone who follows me on social media now knows why I often use the hashtag #GrowAKiwi.
Glad to help.
So, yeah, exactly. So we are kind of cataloging the questions in the background. Please feel free to shoot any. We've got lots of good comments and discussion points, but if you have any specific questions, please put those into the chat for us. And we are, I don't have the date for the second class, so I apologize for that. But for those of you that are joining us on the webinar today, we are running a special. We have a Drive Stakeholder Value ITIL 4 course, which is guaranteed to run December 7th. And we are putting up several dates for the 4-hour Essence of Experience class. And we are offering a complimentary seat in the Essence of Experience class for anyone who chooses to register for the ITIL 4 DSV. And more details about that will be in the follow-up email. So Judy says, hey, Judy, could we interweave the customer journey with the employee comment or use value stream mapping to get further insights? And if so, what do you think that would look like?
So first, I think, yes, Judy, both, right? I think the value stream, because that's the holistic approach. We've got to understand what the value is we're trying to deliver. But we also have to look, I think employees are the ones that have insight. All employees have insight to where they are today. And there's a Vance and Bourne study. It's a Next Think study, the Digital 2020 report. And it really kind of shows how even employees have different perspectives. They surveyed both IT employees and other employees in the organization, and they both have entirely different views about the digital experience. And I'll add a generational piece in there as well. But I think, yes, let's get some comments. And from those comments, let's go start looking at what we know operationally, or what are all the touch points and interactions? What does this journey look like? What is this holistic experience? And then let's work with the business on what is the value we're trying to deliver. And it is going to drive business decisions. Much to Lisa's point about Apple, you know, there are some specific decisions that they're making because they want to drive you toward different actions. Does that answer it, Judy?
I think that it does, but of course I am not Judy. Awesome. Also include operations feedback, yeah.
Yes, good.
And I
will
will
say
say
that your data.
I mean, go ahead.
I'm not saying that data is not important. Again, we've got to work efficiently in our own areas, but we've got to understand how they impact the experience, and we've just got to make sure we're measuring the right things. Go ahead, Lisa.
Well, I was just going to say, Anna Marie made a great comment, and I'm looking at the list, and she works at the same organization where Davey works, and as you may remember, Davey's the one who made the great comment about surveys are often closed questions. So I'm saying they get this at their organization, because Anne Marie says, move away from watermelon metrics,
yes,
which are typically for the sake of, in all caps, having metrics. As I said to your peer Davey, amen, sister. Exactly.
Yeah, if I could speak that for a minute too. That was one of those lessons I learned the hard way. Like I am old, although Lisa, tries to say I'm not. I am. And when I came here to Georgia and started working for Siemens Energy and Automation, it was really at a time when your tools were starting to give you a lot of canned reports. So my service desk manager started to post those canned reports. Most of them were ACD reports, and then that's what they were measured on. And I actually had a sales manager call and say, hey, I was looking at key stats. The average speed to answer has increased. The abandon rate has increased. You need to let him hire 2 more people. And I was like, hey, how are sales? I mean, like, what was he doing getting into that? So you're right. Some people do it for the sake of having metrics. We often choose easy to measure metrics or easy to gather metrics. And that's what this is not about that, right? This is about the right combination of sentiment and numbers. And absolutely, to get feedback, let's not try to drive that feedback to where we want it to be so we get a good score. Let's really learn about what we need to fix. Sorry, Lisa, go ahead.
Oh, no, I agree wholeheartedly. There are several questions about training around XLAs, but I will ask if you'd like, please just send an email to info@itsmacademy.com or come onto the chat to ask one of our awesome genius agents, and they'll be happy to send you out some information because I don't want to take our limited time to talk about that today. Here is a really good one. Jacob is asking, so when you present the idea of experience and this new to me concept of XLAs, how are senior managers, I think this is Jacob, I'm sort of paraphrasing, but how are senior managers reacting to that?
So I want to say 2 things on that, if you don't mind, and I'm sure Lisa has an answer there as well. So first of all, I think that's why it's so important. When I talked about no blame storming, they're going to care. And actually, Nate's story, when they started to share that, they started to pull some people in the room, like maybe they needed to pull marketing in because they heard these comments, and then they started to be a little more interested, and it just kept growing about the people that were interested. So I think, we always have to look for influencers and sponsors. They do care. It's got to tie back to what the business is trying to do. And I think it's a matter of doing it in a way that's like, hey, we heard of these comments, so we started to look into this, and we're thinking there's a way to get better here. But certainly we need to know if this is the direction the business wants to go in. So I think that's our approach is really important. And then I've seen a lot really embrace it. And I want to qualify that comment a bit. I feel like a lot of companies think they're doing customer experience because they're putting those words in their company goals, but they're not necessarily aligning everything in the company to really work toward that. And I do believe that we need to focus on employee experience who, back to Judy's point, as we hear what they're learning and experiencing and what they, as they're being more forthcoming with all of this, we're going to get better at the CX side. So I've seen some respond to it, if you can combine that data and that sentiment, then I feel like they're taking it seriously and trying, at least in that particular area, trying to make it better. Like, for example, somebody was in class the other day and she said, I'm really excited about this. XLAs are really new to me, but I think I'm going to go and I'm going to try to fix onboarding because I know we've heard a lot of comments about it. I don't know that it's the number one area where we should focus, but I get it. I've heard the comments and I'd like to try all this out on it. So I know that was a really long answer, but Lisa, did you want to add?
No, that was a great answer. And I will say too, through my partnership with XLA CoLab, I've been doing a lot more international work. And, like they were with ITIL, like they were with ITIL, the European market, particularly the Netherlands, seems to be 12 to 18 months kind of ahead of our thinking. So, we're seeing experience management offices being stood up. We're seeing people creating and implementing XLAs in the UK, all kinds of organizations, mostly large, lots of insurance, lots of banks, et cetera, pharmaceuticals, fintech. But I'm now, I can tell you this, Rand, because as you know, I've been talking about XLAs for quite a while. My cheesy little thing, which is, hey, everyone, get out a piece of paper, write down today's date, my name, and the term experience level agreement, because I know that we're going to be hearing about this for the rest of our careers, and I want credit. So, you know, when I present here in the United States and I ask the question, you know, before the synopsis of my presentation, who'd ever heard of XLAs? It's now maybe 7% of the people who are raising their hands. When I started this tour about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, often it was no one in the room. So, you know, but I think with so much focus being put on digital transformation and then this immediate shift to work from home. And Marianne, I know I've told you this before. One of my favorite things I ever saw on social media was who's driving your work from home or your digital transformation? CIO, CEO, COVID. That was 100% COVID, right? So we took huge jumps that we weren't planning to take. And in a lot of ways, for a lot of companies, they're really, it's created a lot of positives, so many negatives, but there's been a lot of silver linings with every organization that I speak to. That they've learned some, they've made some changes, and I think because of that, we're seeing more of a focus on the importance of employee experience. And you know my feelings on all of this is we've got to stay focused on the silver linings. So let me see. Oh, Nina, just for fun, I know we're right at time, but if you could throw that polling question back up for us, because I'd like to see the compare and contrast. I want to thank everyone who is here with us today. If we get any more questions in, Rand and I are going to hang out and answer them for you guys. We are taking December, oh goodness. I believe that we're taking December off from our webinar, and our next webinar is going to be in January. I truly apologize. I don't have that information in front of me. I heard everyone's experience on the call, and for that I apologize. But you know, we do them every month since 2007. We bring in the best of the best, and we love to have practitioners speak for us, because face it, you guys all want to hear practitioners. Guess what? You are practitioners. We are very happy to help you build a presentation that then you can go tout around to the conferences and help build your own personal brand. I'm personally happy to assist you with that, as is my entire team. So if you're a practitioner with a story, and Davey and Maria, I feel like you guys might be practitioners with a good story, you know, we'd love to get those practitioner stories in. So for those of you that have to drop off, thank you so much for spending time with us today. And it looks like we've got our fun poll. Oh, yep, we've got our fun poll back up. So before you jump off, if you want to just answer that, we turned 11% more cheeky child than we had when we started. So well done, you. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. And there are a couple of quick questions on your way out. One of them is ideas about topics. We really, really do listen to those. We use those to build our schedule. So if you would please, if you have any ideas, anything you'd like for us to present on, please share that with us. And the next webinar has been confirmed for January 21st. And I believe it is a practitioner talking about site reliability engineering. I should feel like I should know that, but whatever. It's been a week. And Rayanne, lots and lots of compliments. Thanks so much. Job well done. Questions answered, but no actual new questions. So, okay, my friend, I believe your work here is done.
Okay. Thank you so much. It was my pleasure.
Thank you. It was great spending time with you as always, and we'll talk soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Happy Thanksgiving, people.